resilience, persistence, and determination. And these are three words that this gentleman here, Warren Davies, who's known as the Unbreakable Farmer, talks about every single day. Well, g'day everybody, Sam Marwood here from Cultivate Farms, and we're all about supporting next-gen farmers to follow their farm ownership dreams and helping retiring farmers to step back and transition ownership to top-quality next-gen farmers. And a lot of that, and what we talk about is resilience, persistence, and determination. And these are three words that this gentleman here, Warren Davies, who's known as the Unbreakable Farmer, talks about every single day. And Warren and I caught up a couple of weeks ago, and I just loved his story. We got along really well, and we thought we have to get Warren's face and voice in front of all of our followers to inspire you to keep following your dreams. So Warren, thank you very much for your time.
G'day Sam, thanks for having me along. It's a real privilege to have a chat to you today.
And you're in Kyabram, Victoria, which is where our first aspiring farmers were matched with investors. So it's a great part of the world.
It is a good part of the world. A beautiful sunny day today. So weather's always good in Kyabram.
Just that sun doesn't stop, does it? Anyway.
No, that's it.
So, mate, today I want to focus on aspiring farmers, and we spoke about this at our last catch up on the phone. And we think that the biggest barrier now to next gen farmers owning a farm is the mental barrier that, if you want it, you can have it. Money is no longer the barrier because we've figured out it's all about relationships and connecting people. So I want that sort of be our theme: is how do you keep getting up every morning and fighting for this crazy dream of owning a farm. So the things we're going to unpack. But first off, I'd love for you to just give a bit of a background about yourself, which I find really interesting. I love that you've got this focus on mental strength and being unbreakable. And you're a farmer, or you were a farmer, and also even more interesting is that you weren't a farmer and you became a farmer. I love all that story. So just maybe a brief outline of your story, mate, and then we'll get cracking to some concepts.
Yeah, no worries. So as you've touched on there, I wasn't always a farmer. I wasn't always a country boy. I was born and bred in Melbourne and lived in Melbourne until I was 15. So. So becoming a farmer was probably something, to my friends as I was growing up, was something that that's way out there. It wasn't that I know lots of my friends that I'm still connected with that I grew up with are definitely not that. Like they're corporate bankers and big real estate agent owners in Docklands and places like that. So being a farmer was something different. But I suppose it was mum and dad were small business owners, and dad always harboured this dream of becoming a farmer. And so that's basically what he did. He followed his dream, where you had friends that were farmers that were in Gippsland, and they progressed through the ranks. They were share farmers, and then from share farming went into farm ownership, and then they went from Gippsland and chased that dream over the mountains called irrigation, and they moved up here to the Golden Valley. And I think, cut a long story short, we come up to visit them on school holidays, and then all of a sudden Dad bought a farm and he moved to the country. So, which was good for me, because at that time I was struggling at school and trying to find, my way forward and what was I going to do, and always had these thoughts in the back of my head that probably only, and no disrespect to the Garbos out there, but that's what I was going to end up being. Like I aspired, living at the foothills of the Dandenongs, aspired to be a park ranger, but knew that I probably didn't have the academic rigour to become one, and probably didn't at that stage didn't have the career advice at in year 9 at school that if you did this, this, and this, which is what happens today at school. Creating pathways for kids. I may have ended up being that, but obviously moving to the country, still at school and still struggling. But I suppose my whole concept of farming back in those days was tractors and motorbikes. That's what I thought farming was about. And I quickly then, upon leaving school, got a job, like as a nearly 16 years and 9 months or whatever I was, got a job on a farm as a farmhand, and quickly developed that passion for not only farming, and probably quickly moved away from the passion of tractors and motorbikes, because I hate small engines and I hate stuff that you got to fix, and developed this passion for cows. I just love cows, and I love farming, and I love that thing of turning that green stuff into white stuff. It was a real, it's a challenge, but it was something that I really loved. I loved fiddling with cows' diets to make them milk better and make sure that they were optimally healthy, and that was the start of that. And on that farm where I got that job, I worked there for 7 years and got to the stage where I thought I knew everything about farming that I needed to know in that 7 years, and decided that, and I suppose this is the stuff that if I had met you 30 years ago, might have led to different avenues, I suppose. But I had a couple of options up my sleeve at that stage, and it was either lease a farm, go share farming, and a lot of share farming stories from our friends had been fraught with danger, I suppose. So, and leasing there was not a lot of options of leasing around us at that stage. So the other option was to buy. And that's what we did. We bought basically a bare farm, or it had a house on it, but no dairy, nothing, but it was right next to Mum and Dad's farm, and we joined those two properties together and created a family business. So, and that's where the real farming journey, I suppose, even though I'd been working on a farm for 7 years, the real farming journey started.
And this is the start of the Unbreakable Farmer, isn't it, Warren? That you started this from nothing, and this will be a story you unpack, and you had a crack, and then just life happened, and drought, and this is where you've learnt those skills about resilience and persistence and determination, and that's the stuff you're sharing across the country now, is from that lived experience of the realities of farming sometimes.
Yeah, and I suppose naively, as that 22-year-old, as I went into that farming business, I, obviously knew that I was going into business with Mum and Dad, which can be fraught with danger, family businesses as well. Going obviously into business with the bank because they lent me the money, but I also went into business with my silent business partner, which was Mother Nature, and she decided to come along a few times and belt me around the ears, but also taught me some really good lessons, and taught me some skills like, about being adaptable and having initiative and being able to problem solve on the run, basically, sometimes, because that's the way farming sometimes unfolds, that you've got to have those skills to be able to push forward. But also on the other part of my story was I also had some mental health challenges as well, and some of these real challenges that were, I suppose, I was confronted with had a major effect on that as well, and I did spiral out of control a little bit, or a fair bit, not a little bit, and so that was another element to that. But the farming side of it was just, we had a flood, which really challenged us, and as an up and coming business and not generational farmers either, so we, basically Mum and Dad were just finding their feet. I was finding my feet, and just newly married, and with our first child on the way, our farm went completely underwater, and happened on the 4th of October, which was not ideal timing because we were ready to cut hay. Cows were hitting their peak and basically lost everything on the ground. And so probably one that with my mental health, it was a bit of a challenge. On the other hand, it taught me some really good lessons about feeding cows, and, that you can make shit happen even though you're faced with the most dire of at that stage felt like the most dire of situations. You can still make shit happen, and you can, you know, get that going.
Mm-hmm. It's full on, and I want to encourage people to they can jump on the internet and see more of your backstory, because it is really really interesting. But what I want to do now is just unpack and use that knowledge of your journey and what you're talking through across the country, Warren, to farmers and to just anyone in business and anyone in life, but particularly honing that knowledge around these aspiring farmers. So we are asking aspiring farmers to put themselves out there every day. So we're saying for you to own a farm, you need to build relationships with people who can back you and who could help you. So potentially investors and retiring farmers. And in conjunction, you know, we're encouraging them to put themselves on social media and talk about their farm, their desires to own a farm, and documenting how they want to that they had this dream like you did to get on your farm. And no doubt, and this is the same thing with starting Cultivate farms, there's this thing that's going to happen which is called rejection, and there's going to be a reality that people are going to go, nah, I don't want to back you. I think what you're thinking about is crazy. Who wants to farm anyway? And then there's also the perception of rejection, which probably stops a lot of people from chasing their dreams. And this is what we're saying. We want you to go for your dream. We know it's a big dream, but to get there is going to take a lot of hard work and get a lot of rejection. So I'd love to get your thoughts about how do aspiring farmers cope with the concept of rejection and the realities of rejection. So how do they break through that barrier and just keep going and fighting for this dream?
To answer those questions, I can delve and that's one good thing about farming. It teaches you lots of lessons. And my favourite saying, and I was actually still, even though I've been going around the country speaking and that, I was still actually working on a dairy farm up until Christmas time, and I used to tell people that I was working with or that I was managing that there's one thing that dairy farming taught me. If I wasn't learning something that day, I needed to seriously check my pulse, because basically you must be dead if you're not learning something, because dairy farming in particular, teaches you something new every day. You'll see something that you might have been in the game for 30 years like I had been. You'll see something that day that you've never seen before. And that's good. And it builds up like a big encyclopedia of knowledge in your head. But I think using the drought I can use the drought situation on our farm to answer your question, because it taught me the biggest lessons, and lessons of connection and relationships were the thing that helped us get through for that first initial part of the drought. Because if we didn't have those connections and relationships, we wouldn't have survived from day one, because, you know, sourcing feed and all that. But also I think dealing with that concept of rejection, and it was Mother Nature that was rejecting me at that stage, and it was, how did you get up every morning and keep going and keep that dream alive? And I think it's just that if you've got that passion to be a farmer, getting up every morning, regardless of what you're confronted with, it just happens, because, you know, that's what you want to be. And I fought hard for that dream. Obviously, at the end of the day, things were stacked against us because we were a new business, and the drought continued on, and basically we were probably in a position that, and it's funny that I say this now, but I'm still friends with our bank manager that we had back on the farm in those days, and he even says to me now, if I had had the skills I've got now, then I could have helped you differently. And that, you know, but that, you know, that's history, and you can't change that. But at the end of the day, you know, having connections to people around you that can help you continue or source the feed that you need to do, or find the solutions. I talk a lot about community when I speak, and the power of community, and I think that's what you're developing with Cultivating Farms, is that community. And within a community there's shared wisdom, and you can tap into that and that shared wisdom, because everyone's got different story. Everyone's been through different situations, and everyone's dealt with them differently. And if you can tap into that, and I think that's really, from what I've looked at what you're doing, kind of that encapsulates what you're doing. You're tapping into resources and knowledge from all different sectors to help people, achieve a dream of getting into farming. So relationships are really important, and developing them. And I was talking about that rejection. There's rejection in anything, and having stepped out of farming and then stepped back into farming as a manager, and stepped back out and stepped back in, and every industry, once you step away from farming, you think, well, the old saying, grass is greener on the other side of the fence. Well, sometimes it's not, because every industry has its challenges. Every industry has its good and its bad points. And I think, like we were talking before we come on air about, I wouldn't change anything about my farming journey, because it's created who I am today. It's created what my kids are today, whether that's good or bad in some points, but everything's got its good and bad. And I wouldn't change that for anything.
I love it. So I think the 2 points I took from that, Warren, are those definitely the relationships. So having that tribe around you, those like-minded people who can see that vision you've got, so that when, things, when a retiring farmer says no, and I don't want to back you, you've got someone to be able to call up and talk it through. I think that is so key. And the other one you touched on there was, and I don't think you said it this way, but it's like, do you really want this dream? And that, I think a lot of this is around, do you really want it? So if you really want something, you'll put up with whatever to get there. And a lot of this is probably shaking out, hey, I've got this idea of being a farmer. And then you go through the realities of it, and you're like, this actually is going to be hard, and I'll be an entrepreneur, and all the decisions will be on my head, and this is all on me. And some people love that, and some people are just not that person at all, and prefer to work for somebody rather than be the entrepreneur. So that sort of mentality of knowing, yes, this is all I can do, this is all I can think of, this is all when I wake up, that is all I can think of doing. Knowing that, and then having that tribe around you to help you get there, seem to be the two core ideas.
Yeah, and I keep harping back, it doesn't matter what industry you're in, that's the same. Like, if you want to be your own boss and don't want to work, and for me, starting out, like obviously working on a farm for 7 years and then going out on my own, well, then for the next 16 or 18 years, I was my own boss. So when when the drought kind of finalised my dream a little bit, I then had to and it's never been the same. Working for someone wasn't the same. So my driver, and hence why now I'm doing what I'm doing, is because I'm in control. And there's nothing wrong with working for someone either. There is avenues for everyone. There's pathways for everyone. If you want to be in agriculture or in farming, there's all these pathways. Farm ownership is one of those pathways, and you can be a manager, but you've got to develop the skills to get to that stage. You can't just step in and, which is a misconception of a lot of younger people these days that think that, I don't want to buy a farm, I can't, but I'll be a manager. Well, that doesn't happen. Like, you can be, but you've got to have the knowledge behind you to be a manager. And those concepts change a little bit, have changed a little bit as farming's evolved, because like when I started farming, I always remember sitting down at a leadership leadership management program that I was doing through the Australian Institute of Management, and sitting down with a farmer, and he goes, when we started farming, we had, I think it was 300 acres, we were milking 120 cows, and we had a share farmer. Well, that doesn't happen these days. And farming families have then evolved into bigger farms where they employ people and all that. And it's just where you want to get in the industry and what you want to do. And I suppose what your perception of risk is, and there's lots of things that come into it. But if you've got that dream of, and look, and I know lots of people now, some younger families as well that are, in fairly trying conditions at the moment, especially in the dairy industry, are making their way quite successfully. But also probably not traditionally either. So they're farmers and dairy farmers foremost, but they're entrepreneurs as well. And, they're diversifying their business a little bit as well. And, might be producing cheese or their own milk or whatever it is, to find that way to keep their dream alive. And that's the important part of it. As I keep harping back to, everything in life has got its challenges, and everyone's got to find their own way of making it work. So if farming's what you want to be, and you want to be a farmer, you'll make it work. Obviously, for me, moving away from the farm and then managing farms, that was something that I loved too, because I was able then to go into like businesses that I would have never been able to afford myself, and then develop my skills further. So it was and plus, like, we'd been just the way our farming journey evolved, it probably put us under too much pressure from the start, and so that was the pathway I took, because I was passionate about continuing to be a farmer even though I didn't have my farm anymore. But going back to when we were younger, that wasn't an option. I didn't want to go and work for a bigger farm or, be that manager. I wanted to be the one that called the shots and made my own decisions.
Yeah, and that changes over time. Like, you might want to own, as you're saying, a farm when you're younger, and then you realise, no, I'm happy to work for someone. Then later on, you're like, no, I want to own my farm again. It's not like life's static, and you have static dreams as well. That's a good point.
Yeah, and that's hence how I've become a speaker, and I get to travel around the country doing what I'm doing now, because that I could see that as my passion, and I was able to help people negate their journeys when they and hopefully help people negate or travel their journey through and miss the bits that I kind of picked up.
It's so good. Like, even your story is interesting just from an entrepreneur point of view, that you're farming and then you had this side hustle around speaking and talking about resilience and persistence, and then that build up over time. It's like a farmer building their skills up over time, and once people see you and you build traction, opportunities come, and then you're like, oh, this is no longer a side hustle. This can be my thing. And that's the mentality I want these farmers to have: is get out there, build your skills, maybe have a job elsewhere, and try and work on a farm, and slowly over time, when people see you're good enough and you want it, the doors open. That feels like the journey you've been on.
So you've hit that on the head. So my farming, so basically I fell for the look what the Joneses are doing and try and follow them. In hindsight, there's lots of hindsight in life. In the situation that we were in when we decided that we had to leave our farm, in hindsight now, I wish I had held on to it. I wish I had the advice to tell me to do that. And then I could have gone and done that management job or whatever and used my skills and still had my asset and my farm, and waited for the drought to break and then fire back up again. But there was a lot of knee-jerk reactions happened around then. And as I said, my bank manager told us, like, only just at Christmas time, he goes, we were having a coffee, and he said, if I had known what I know now, things would have been different. So, and that's what you're saying. Like, you don't necessarily have to start off, with the 60-stand rotary and a feed barn or whatever you want. You can start off small and build. And I know lots of people that have got jobs, and great jobs, off farm, and it's all working for them because there's this passion to be a farmer. They love, and I'm talking particularly dairy farming, love their cows, love the lifestyle of bringing their kids up in that environment. But they've got good jobs, and it all works together. When you're younger, you've got to put the hard yards in. Or even when you're older, like me, developing a new business, you've got to put the hard yards in to make it work. And that's farming. Well, that's life in general. If you want to get something out of life, you've got to work hard for it. Nothing comes easy. And anyone that thinks it does, they need to reevaluate how they're looking at life. And I got taught that lesson really well by my eldest son, who's a musician. And, you know, everyone talks about overnight success and stuff like that, especially in the music industry, because all of a sudden someone appears on the radio with this great song and you go, oh, where'd they come from? But no one's seen the gigs that they were playing to pubs when 2 people were watching them, and you know 10 years ago, and no one knew who they were, and all of a sudden they're overnight successes. Well, 10 years is not quite overnight. That's generally what happens, and that's farming as well, because I probably fell into the trap and was my wife's family were generational farmers and just happened to be where we bought our farm. They were our neighbours as well, and I seen what they were doing, thinking, why can't I do that? And I fell into a little bit of that trap of trying using their model as my model, and it wasn't my model. I should have created now with the knowledge I've got, created my own model. So whatever that would be. And as I said, when the drought was on, that would have been now in hindsight, hold on to my farm and maybe then, destock and then restock and go again. My decision was we left the farm. And that's just unfortunate. Can't take back history, but that's, my advice is, if you've got that dream, fight harder for it, because at the end of the day, I lost my identity the day that I left my farm, and it's taken me a long time to find where it is, and now I've found it as a speaker. And obviously working on farms and that, I still had that passion and I still loved working with cows, but it wasn't the same. But I was still able to use and develop the skills that I've accumulated over the years to, what I believe, become a good manager on a farm. Some people might disagree with you, but I believe that I was good, and I was good at what I did, and I still am good at what I did and do, and love that challenge of basically turning green stuff into white stuff and keeping cows on their feet and making sure they're healthy and doing everything ethically and all that sort of stuff. All those skills that you develop along the way. But I could have done that and still had my farm. And I think that's where something like what you're doing fits in, because that would have given either myself different options, and it's about building those relationships. And unfortunately, our relationship and connections come 14 years too late. But for me, that's the idea of it. If you can, I think your role is like my role as a speaker at the moment. You're like the conduit. That's the way I look at it. I'm a conduit that I can talk to people, and if people are struggling, I've got networks behind me now after 4 years of speaking that I can plug people into to get them the help that they need. You're doing the same thing. You're like the conduit. You've got contacts. You can match people together. You can connect with people that can make dreams happen, and that's really important.
I agree, and I think about your story, and I love the idea of we can inspire the 25-year-old Warren Davies to keep going for the farm ownership dream. And me as an 8-year-old, like I still think about when my parents said I wasn't going to get the farm, and I just straight away knew, I'm not going to be a farmer. But I love the idea that we can change people's mindsets and go, no, that's not going to stop you. You can still own this farm, and there's still ways to get to your dream. And I think that's what keeps us going. And so this sort of leads into my next question, Warren, around chasing your dreams. And the reality probably is for so many farmers is it's probably a 10-year journey to go from, yes, I want to own my farm, or to finding a pathway to get there. Because convincing people can take a while. So thoughts on how you keep hanging on to that vision when things take 10 years? What any tips around that?
Well, I suppose it depends where your passion lies. And like we said, there's lots of things that you can do. So if you're working off farm and your passion's farming, develop your skills, like do the stuff that you need to do to make sure that you're top of your game. And it's, I think if you've got that dream, and farming's different to say I want to be an AFL footballer dream, because at the start. You've got to have the skill at the start to be an AFL footballer, to be recognised, to move forward. But farm ownership is about developing skills and building knowledge and doing what you need to do to get yourself in the position where you're best situated for either someone. It works out. It doesn't matter if it's an investor or it's a bank or whatever. You've still got to sell your skills to whoever it is for them to jump on board. So it's about developing those skills. So, at a young age, and that's where I think my story went a little bit wrong, is I just wanted to own my own farm from day one. And I'd done that apprenticeship and thought naively that's all I needed to do. But in hindsight, I would have loved to have travelled to the States or something and developed more skills, and that's the step I should have taken probably before the farm ownership or wherever it was, or managed the farms that I've managed since, big farms, and learnt lots about managing staff and all those skills that you think traditional farming, those skills weren't important, but these days they are, because it doesn't matter unless you're just a complete farming unit farm. If you're on a bigger farm, you're going to have to employ people and you're going to have those skills. So just go on that journey and know that, there's time, but it's a bit of it's a bit of a challenging statement because everyone says life's short and get on with it. But at the end of the day, you also got time. You don't have to put yourself into a position where everything's I suppose it's that old saying about building a good foundation. If you don't build a good foundation, the house falls over, and it's putting those blocks in place and building your dream to the ultimate part of this conversation is that farm ownership. So start building those blocks, learn the skills that you need to do, and just keep building and progressing until you get to that stage.
I like it. I keep talking to Tim Hicks about this, co-founder. And it's taken longer than we'd hoped for them to get onto their farm ownership. And, we haven't had phone calls going, it just feels slow and feels frustrating. And I kept thinking, well, actually what you're doing is you're getting all their skills in running farms, and working with people that you can steal and use and have for the rest of your life when you get onto your farm. It feels like there's this period of upskilling, which is so valuable for you for when you get onto that property. So maybe that's the way of thinking, is like, I know I need to go through these. It's almost risk mitigation in a way. You're utilizing somebody else's farm for you to get yourself up to the skills you need to be. That's, as you're talking, that's what I was thinking just then, is that idea of risk mitigation, so that you can get rid of those bad ideas or poor ways of doing things and on someone else's property.
But it's also it's just having those skills. So, like when we left our farm, I went to Mount Gambier and managed a farm. And I reckon in the first 6 months of that farm, even though I'd been on my own farm for close on 20 years and worked on a farm for 7 years prior to that, in 6 months I learnt stuff that I never knew. In 6 months, like I'd seen stuff that I'd never seen, dealt with different problems because we were in a different area, and that's something that, it's not ideal because you have to move around, but I'd recommend to any aspiring farmer is don't farm in one district.
Mm.
Farm in a couple of different districts and learn different skills that they all come back and they're all in your toolbox when you need them, wherever you're farming. But like moving from northern Victoria to South Australia, I learnt different skills in 6 months, and I'd been a farmer for all my life at that stage and learnt stuff that I never even knew. One of them, managing people was one of those skills that I never had, because on my farm, all I had to do was manage myself. I didn't have to manage people. So, it was, if I had to recommend to anyone that was going on this pathway is, if farm ownership's not today and you have to build those skills, maybe set about that 10-year plan, but move around a little bit and learn skills from different places. Which is like the old way of thinking, I'm going to have a job for 40 years and then I'll retire. Well, that doesn't happen in any industry these days. So why does it have to happen in farming? So move around and learn skills off different people. And then
yep.
at the end of the day, you've got a toolbox that you can't carry around. You need a ute to carry it around because you've got that many skills that you can use anywhere.
That's great. Well, a blatant plug is that we've got farms on our database right now for farmers to grab on. And if you want to get on a great farm and build those skills, they're all over Australia. So get traveling, pick up those farms. And one of my last questions, Warren, is about retiring farmers. And given your unique perspective in traveling to all corners of Australia, I want to see if you've got any messages of hope to aspiring farmers. That are there retiring farmers out there that you've seen that are open to this idea of transitioning ownership to kids that aren't their own? Like we talked about it quickly the other day, but it's always intriguing to see people who haven't really known what we're doing and throw this question at them and to see what they say. But I won't jump in. But your thoughts on that?
So you talked about before about that start the seed of the unbreakable farmer, if you like, which I didn't never clarified before. But I'm really uncomfortable in the farming space calling myself the unbreakable farmer, and I always before every talk explain how it all happened, because I'm not the unbreakable farmer. Every farmer's unbreakable and face their challenges. It was just I did a speaker course and we had to come up with this superhero name. That was part of the workshop, and standing up in front of a group of, and I call Melbourne people. They were like, so there was about 13 or 14 of us, and we had to spill our guts, basically. That was part of the workshop. And one bloke stopped me halfway, or not even halfway through me spilling me guts. He goes, "Stop, you're the unbreakable farmer." And I thought, shit, that sounds okay. So coffee break went straight to GoDaddy and typed in the domain name. It's available. Bang, that's it. So, and the rest is history. So that's how that came about. But to get back to that first seed of the unbreakable farmer happened when, on my search for my identity, I become a real estate agent for 3 years as a dairy specialist for a local firm in Shepparton here. And basically every day for the 3 years I worked there, I dealt with 3 Ds every day: death, divorce and drought. And sitting around tables with guys that had been farmers for 40 years, their kids had gone to uni. Basically, they wanted to get off the farm but couldn't afford to get off the farm. You know, there was that really conflicting conversation that they were having in their head. And basically what I become is not a real estate agent, I become a counsellor. And that's then I thought, well, there I've got my journey and I can hit these two together. But on the other side of it, which is your journey now, is those farmers that I sat face to face with genuinely distraught with their decision-making process, because they'd worked their whole bloody life to build this asset and this farm that they were so proud of. And for whatever reason, and most of them legitimate reasons, their kids had moved away to uni or whatever, or got married and didn't want the farm. They had to sell it, and they didn't want to do that. Most of them really, deep in their heart, didn't want to sell that farm. And that's when, like, we had this first conversation a few weeks back. I thought, well, what a fantastic idea that you've got, because that would have given these people an idea. And I set about doing that a little bit, like I was doing a little bit of a remote farm management where I was managing a number of farms remotely, and it kind of worked and it kind of didn't, for all different reasons, and probably most of them were financial constraints within the industries at that stage. But that idea kind of got born from those kitchen table conversations with these farmers, and you know, that's kind of what you're doing now. Because if I had that, well, here's Sam's card, give him a call, this could be an option that you could go down, that, you know, go and spend the next 12 months in Italy or in the Maldives, and let's kind of match you with this guy who's passionate like you were when you were 25 years old about farming, and let him take it on. And one, you can retain your asset and while he's buying it off you, or however you structure it. And two, you might be able to mentor this young fella and turn him into the farmer that you are.
Yeah.
And that's where I see this whole concept is fantastic, because the statistics tell us that, you know, the average age of a farmer is getting up there, and a lot of these guys are at the end of their working life, and they've got these farms that they've worked so hard for, and at the end of the day they've just got to cash them in because that's the only option.
Yeah, and it makes me so sad to think about that. I was talking to a retiring couple a couple of weeks ago about this very thing, and they said, "Oh, I can't believe we've only just found out about what you're doing because we don't want to sell, but that's all the only option we have. We didn't know there was other options out there, and that just makes me feel so sad. But also in some way that I want to inspire aspiring farmers that there is a massive market out there of retirement age farmers who want you, who need you, who don't know about you. And I think that's the sort of spark I want to get out to people is get rid of that mental barrier of double guessing what a retiring farmer might want. Who wouldn't love the idea of what you just said, backing a top quality farmer who would love the land just as much as you do, and you can download all your knowledge and help realize the vision for your farm. Like, that is a great offer. And we're just got to be, and you as an aspiring farmer have to be persistent to go and chase it and try and uncover those farmers. And maybe there's something here about real estate agents, Warren, as well. We maybe need to get them activated and highlighting these options as well.
Exactly right. But I think the thing is that there has to be a mindset shift, like with everyone, and don't just think that on both sides that they're selling that farm is the option. Like, there's so many. When you start moving in really entrepreneurial kind of circles, people come up with solutions to problems that you just think, wow, you know, that'd work. And exactly what you're doing. But it's just, don't let that mental barrier stop you. And I suppose that goes back to your initial question, how do you just keep persisting? And I think it's changing your mindset and just knowing that there's a way. I've just got to find it, and I might have to tread water for a couple of years while I find that solution, but why not, while I'm treading that water, develop the skills that I need to, so when that day comes when that solution, you know, lands on my doorstep or I walk into that solution, I'm ready to go. I think that's the important part, is that if you've got that dream, keep chasing it. Eventually the solution will find you.
That's great, mate. Well, let's leave it there. I'm sure farmers watching this are pumped up, and we want you to keep chasing your dreams as possible. I'm pumped up to keep chasing the Cultivate Farms dream, so I'll keep going on that, mate. Where can people find out more about you? You've got a website, and you can be on call for across Australia to come and do talks, and do you do one-on-one? What are the things you offer, Warren?
Lots of ever evolving. Yeah. Never say no. Don't have a locked mindset, because everything changes from day to day. So I had a massive conversation with someone yesterday that wants me to do kind of door-to-door stuff to remote farmers, which was something that I haven't done, but it was, well, why not? You know, and never say no. And I think the biggest thing I've learned out of this journey of becoming a speaker is never say no, just say yes, and then consult with your diary and make sure it can work. And if it can't, find another solution, but just say yes. And I think that transpires through to what we've been talking about as well. Just say yes and just keep going and keep trying to follow that dream. You know, you've got that dream, the thing that you want to achieve, just keep doing whatever you have to do to make sure you achieve it.
And we're going to do a few more follow-up videos as well and keep this conversation going. But it's you went to GoDaddy, and the URL you got was sorry, I've got sidetracked. www.theunbreakablefarmer.com.au, or you can check me out on Facebook, LinkedIn, Snapchat,
Instagram.
You on Snapchat?
Snapchat.
No, your kids are.
I just don't get that Snapchat thing.
Mate, you'll be on it. Don't never say never, you said, so you'll be on it very soon.
No, that's it. I've tried to learn those skills, and then I think I've got too much on my plate at the moment. I'll just hone the ones that I'm good at, and then I'll move on to Snapchat later on. And by the time I get there, there'll be something else.
That's right. You'll be teleporting everywhere. Warren,
that's exactly right.
Mate, thank you so much for your time. You're very generous. I've got a lot of this, and I know our farmers will as well. So thanks, mate, and looking forward to another catch-up very soon, and enjoy the sunshine in Kyabram.
No worries. Thanks, mate. Cheers.
Cheers, mate.
Thank you for your attention and for watching this video. Click here or somewhere to watch more of our videos. If you're new here, please do subscribe. We want more of your attention. We want to get you inspired to get onto your farm. Let's get you farming.